Hello, everyone. How are you, Sigmund?
Hello. Great. It's springtime, French Quarter Fest, and it was terrible. New Orleans almost floated away again yesterday, but it didn't. We're still here, so let's have a good weekend.
That's something we're celebrating, huh?
Yeah, every day. Every day. Hey, tomorrow's not promised to anybody.
You said it right there. Every day.
You got a team, here's a word to the wise. You want to dominate your league? Go to football, guys.
Football, I'm living in a fantasy. Football, got everybody mad at me. Football, cause every game I had to win. Football, I gotta be a champion. Football, I'm living in a fantasy.
All right, it's time to get into what these NFL coaches are buzzing about here on today's edition of the audiblefootballguys.com. And the beast is out. Dane Brugler from The Athletic, I believe, is the best draft analyst that there is. Matt Waldman is the best at skill position players. Dane is the best at everything. Okay, and there's several others out there. I always suggest getting Emory Hunt's draft guide, but you get Dane Brugler's draft guide. The beast is there, and always these little tidbits, Bloom. Including this tidbit on Caleb Williams. And oh my God, NFL scouts, y'all got to stop. This quote says on Caleb Williams, he really wants to be Jay-Z of the NFL, a true entrepreneur. And that's great, as long as he's winning on the field. That sounds like an old fuddy-duddy scout, right, Bloom?
Yeah, and I think that NIL, I don't remember which, I think it was one of the GMs said there are fewer draft eligible players. I'm going to have Dane on the couch Monday of draft week. Won't release, but I was real excited about that because the beast, and Dane and I talk about this every year. I'm thankful that he takes some of his valuable time. And by the way, if we're lavishing praise on Dane, we got to lavish praise. You know who his mentor was?
Cio Bricado. He spent so much time with Cio Bricado and Gil Brandt. He'd go to Gil Brandt's house
and
study under Gil Brandt. And I love Dane's story, Bloom, because he came up under Chad Ryder, who's a dear friend of ours from NFL Network. And I remember when NFLDraftScout.com was still a thing, and Chad was there, Rob Rang was there, some great luminaries and dear friends. And then there's this young kid, Dane Brugler, I think it was like 17 or something. And I remember being at Chad's house one time, and there was this stack of hard drives, like external hard drives, right? I was like, what's that? And he goes, that's the college football season. That's what we pay Dane Brugler with. So when he was still a teenager and he was doing this for nothing, he was sent every college football game on hard drives, plural, so that he could watch more football. He did it for free. And we can all get into that conversation. I don't really want to because it's kind of annoying, Bloom, but like you got to pay your dues and you got to work your ass off. And Dane Brugler has paid his dues and he works his ass off, and that's why he's the best.
Yeah, and he knew what he wanted to do. And I mean, it's one thing to say you're working for free. It's another thing to say you're working for free if you're getting to learn from Gil Brandt. I mean, if we're talking about the NFL draft, Gil Brandt is one of the masters. And we think about the Cowboys and the Steelers in the Super Bowl era, Gil Brandt and Bill Nunn. I was just bringing up Bill Nunn because of that 1974 Steelers class that had 4 Hall of Famers. And Bill Nunn, of course, his son was Radio Raheem. May they both rest in peace. But the stuff with Caleb Williams, and what's going to be interesting to follow here is he's the first mega quarterback prospect of the NIL era, where he has been the driver of his career in terms of how he's viewed and earning capacity and things like that. Whereas before, the idea was that players would prove themselves in college so they could get the payday. Who else probably doesn't like this very much? These agents. Agents probably don't like this very much because it used to be not that long ago that the reason you would get an agent is because your agent would bankroll all this training and all this stuff leading up to the draft, and you would be literally and figuratively indebted to them. And then you get your big contract, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now if these players are bringing in money, they don't have to listen to an agent. They don't have to listen to these people who have been the gatekeepers in this process, including NFL general managers. You do it this way. This is the way we want it done. And I think that's threatening. So when I heard a GM say there are fewer draftable prospects this year, there might not be enough to fill up the draft. And I think they cited name and image likeness. I can't wait to ask Dane what he thinks about that, because we are entering a different era of how much agency players have at this point in the process. And Caleb Williams and how he does in his career absolutely will be a test case for this, but maybe not the best test case, because as I was talking to Chris Trapazzo on the couch earlier this week, love Chris, what's different about Caleb Williams is normally when a quarterback prospect goes number 1 overall, they're going to a team in the gutter. They're going to a team that's having to be rescued from the bottom of a trough in the franchise's history. But the Bears aren't there. The Bears actually, as Matt Williamson put it on the couch a few weeks ago, they've built a nest for him. And they just hired Shane Waldron on top of that. So Caleb Williams is actually set up for success. So I do think that in that case, if Caleb Williams fails, it might be even more damning for players coming out of the NIL era, and it might make teams go back to players who have that yes sir, no sir kind of attitude.
I wouldn't look to anything Chicago does as being any sort of nest. They got to prove it to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, they have a bunch of talent. Yeah. Their coach doesn't know what he's doing. All right. You should have just washed house. You cleaned out everybody except Eberflus. So it's like, you should just clean house, start all over, right? Go get a guy that can actually caretake this quarterback, because you mentioned it, Bloom. If it doesn't work out for Caleb, then NFL scouts will get even more fuddy-duddy. And I think on the fuddy-duddy scale, they're like turning it up to 11 now.
Yeah.
The stuff with Caleb has to do with his dad and his stupid brand, okay? It doesn't have to do with him as a player. And I don't care about the pink stuff. Like, again, Joe didn't talk to me about the pink bush, though, so either he missed that episode or he's okay with that.
You got to get it past the censors, like they're the goalies. Yeah. Yeah, well, and see, that stuff's nothing new in a way. You can go all the way back to Todd Marinovich if you want to talk about fathers who've had too much say, too much control over what happens with their sons who are on the verge of being NFL superstars or becoming. Todd Marinovich's story is a very sad story. But you're right, and let's go back to the Beast. Why are we spending any time talking about anything except the Beast and Dane Brugler and what's great there? Because one of the things I love, it's the best bio section of any draft guide, and
Yes.
and that doesn't take it all away from the stuff that is the good old red meat football scouting. But with Caleb Williams, what you saw in his bio, again, and this is to your point, Cease, at age 10, I'm reading from the Beast right now. At age 10, Williams and his father created the plan and laid out an aggressive training regimen to put him on the path to the NFL, including sessions with sports psychologists, specialized diets, and 5:30 a.m. workouts at the Prince George's Sports and Learning Complex in Landover, Maryland. Whoa, at age 10. So we'll see, speaking of Todd Marinovich. But I love the bio section, Cease. I love the bio section for stories like Ray Davis. Ray Davis's story. Both of his parents. I'll read from that one because, Ray Davis might be a third-day pick, and for fantasy, it may depend on where he lands. His biological parents spent multiple stretches in prison. Davis lived in homes of extended family and friends and in homeless shelters during his childhood. He entered the foster care system, became a ward of the state at age 8. At age 8, he lived for 2 months in the basement of General Hospital in San Francisco and then moved into the apartment of one of his teachers for a period before living with his grandmother. In sports, basketball, football were his escape, and it goes on from there. It's amazing, these stories. Just that we're talking about Ray Davis as a draftable prospect, and he's really, if you like throwback football, I'm not talking about flashy highlights, I'm not talking about measurables, I'm talking about a lunch pail guy who gets there and plays the game. A guy like Ray Davis, you can see in his background. And again, I'll say CJ Stroud. What maybe do people miss about CJ Stroud? Well, if you got the Beast last year, you knew that CJ Stroud, he's a self-made man. I mean, he didn't have the plan. He didn't have sports psychologists at age 10, nutritionists. He had CJ Stroud. And you see how that maybe is something as a team that you want to put your chip on more than a player who's been set up for success from day one or age
10. And Diego brings it up here. We'll stick with Caleb Williams and then get on to the other quarterbacks. He says, I kind of like that Caleb's been groomed as a quarterback, but his personality that doesn't match an NFL QB. That's true. And the thing with Todd Marinovich, and I'm Facebook friends with Todd.
Oh, wow.
And he's a really good artist now. He's got some NFL pieces that I want to buy. I need to make more money. And he's like a surfer and stuff. So he's found his way. You know, I believe that alcoholism and drug abuse is over in his life. But that's what his dad wouldn't let him do. You know, and I regularly bring up Caleb Williams' dad as a problem, but at least he let him be himself. You know,
Right.
and I suggest that for all parents out there. Like,
Yeah.
they're going to be themselves, and you know, you might have some pink hair. Oh,
Right.
big deal, right?
Do you want them to
Not a
still, like,
problem.
love
Do you
you
want
at
him to
the
still
end?
love you, right? And
Yeah.
so at least Caleb can be himself while still having this generational talent. Sorry to Diego, who's in the Windy City, but it's like, I still don't believe Chicago will get anything out of him because it's them. The problem is them, not him. The problem might be his team and his brand and all that, but still, like, he's got the personality. We'll see if the fuddy-duddy scouts, he's like, wants to be the Jay-Z. Okay. All right. Let's talk about Drake Maye up next, Bloom. And Drake Maye is an odd one because, you know, you want a quarterback to be, and I know this term doesn't mean what it used to be, but you want a quarterback to be presidential, right? Who was the Wilson kid? Tyler Wilson from Arkansas. Remember when he was at the Senior Bowl? I was like, man, I'd vote for him. He's so presidential. That was a different time, Bloom. But like, Drake Maye's up there and he's awkward. And I didn't like that. Now, you know, maybe I'm totally wrong or whatever. I remember when John Beck was at our first Shrine game, and remember he had that mouse-like cadence that I didn't like. I was like, there's some things that just put me off on a quarterback. And Drake Maye has a ton of talent. He's athletic. He's got the big arm. All these things. Yes, the physical stuff is easy to see. We almost not necessarily need to stop talking about the physical stuff, but you bring it up with the beast, Bloom. What did you just note? Like, it's the background.
Yeah.
It's the history. The physical stuff. You're not going to get to the league and be some slow, stiff, you know, like,
Right.
let's maybe you're Jeff Hireman or whatever, but like you're not going to get to this league when your physical stuff isn't there. So whenever I hear from people, yeah, but he's got the arm, like, really? I didn't notice he had an arm. So Drake Maye's got all the physical stuff. But when it comes to personality, it's lacking, and it's a little Leave It to Beaver type stuff. And again, I don't really like that. I kind of want my quarterback to be more of an alpha. Now, this is what a scout says about Drake Maye. Considering his family's success, I expected a cocky kid, but he's real grounded and humble. The golly gee stuff isn't an act. He'll need time before he's ready to lead an NFL room, but he'll get there. Now, that sounds like the hubris of an NFL scout. The first one sounded like the fuddy-duddiness of an NFL scout. The second one sounds like the hubris of like, yeah. He's you know, Leave It to Beaver, but he'll get there. He'll be the alpha. And I'm like, I just don't know if it's him, man. And I don't know how much to ding him. He's my number 3 quarterback. He's Dane Brugler's number 2 quarterback. But like, it kind of matched up with my experience, limited experience in, you know, trying to chat with Drake Maye at the combine.
Yeah, and going on, and again, let's just the beast is so awesome. One of the things that Dane talked about when he was on the show last year is he always wants to know when they started doing sports and what sports they started with. Because you'll see, I started at 4 years, 5 years old. Some of these guys not really until high school. His family is wild. His oldest brother was a 6'8" forward at North Carolina. I don't know if you follow college basketball. North Carolina is pretty good. And he actually made the Milwaukee Bucks as an undrafted free agent. And he hit a buzzer beater to send the Tar Heels through the Final Four. His second oldest brother was a pitcher at Florida and helped them win their first baseball national championship. His next oldest brother, according to the Beast, was blessed with the same athletic gifts, but double-digit knee surgeries. That's like Cooper Manning, right? Derailed his career, and then his roommate walked on to the North Carolina basketball team. So wow, there's already pressure on him, right? I mean, he's already had pressure. You grew up in this family and you're an athlete. You better not have step. Jeez, you talk about having to live up to something. Just the Maye bloodline and how these Maye brothers performed. Now, the difference between him and Caleb Williams in terms of situation, though, is likely Drake Maye is going to end up with Washington or New England. I think if I were to put a chip on the most likely team he'd end up with, it would be New England. And that's rough Now you're rescuing
I
a
think New
franchise.
England is lying, by the way. That's just me. If I said it before, Bloom, please stop
Mhm.
me because I say so much. But like, Washington's going to take Jaden Daniels. We need to stop with any other conversation. And then I think the whole thing, because, and I'll tell you off air who I talked to, but when I heard from a New England person that like, we will take Drake Maye, I wanted to text back and be like, y'all didn't say that in January when you're talking about trading back into the end of the first for Michael Penix. So either something changed or a text I received in April was a lie. So
Yeah,
I
and
think they're lying with the Drake May. They're trying to get Minnesota to move. Minnesota wants Drake May.
and if it's Minnesota, now that is the exception.
Can learn behind Sam Darnold there with Colt McCoy, or
Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, a good offensive line.
McCown,
right?
Sorry. Colt McCoy, Josh McCown, Cade McCown,
Right.
they're all the same. God,
and there's a Josh
blessed
McCown,
player.
Drake May. Right. There's connections
He coached
there.
him in high school. Josh McCown coached Drake May in high school.
Right. Now you put Drake May. Now he has a nest. Now he's in a place. I mean, for fantasy, look at what some of these guys like Nick Mullins and Joshua Dobbs did with Minnesota. So now, if Drake May's not an alpha cease, if Drake May is not somebody who commands the room or commands the locker room, that's okay. That's okay because he's already in a situation where he just has to show up and do his job. And see, we have seen some milquetoast personality guys succeed. Eli Manning is the first that comes to mind, of course.
Eli's got a little more personality.
He does. Well, I think maybe behind the scenes he does, but I'm talking about his public persona. Andrew Luck is another one. Andrew Luck was boring, a very boring personality, but all about that action boss. So, I think, again, where my mind goes back to when we talk about these quarterbacks is, tell me where they're going to land. Now we can really start the conversation.
Yeah, we can start the conversation about Jaden Daniels, my number one quarterback. And Dane has him at number 3 this year. And get what Brian Kelly says, maybe in a fake Southern accent. Because Brian, why do most college coaches have to be turds, allegedly, or whatever I have to say? Like, seriously, I'm going to go to LSU and all of a sudden have a fake South accent. So Brian Kelly said this about Jaden Daniels. His work in the offseason was unbelievable. We used to cut off how long players could stay in the building, but had to change our protocols and give players unlimited access because Jaden basically lived here. Now go read. Everyone subscribe to Mike Tanier's Substack, okay? And be a premium subscriber if you can, because Mike Tanier, every time that shows up in my inbox, I get a smile. So he had advanced quarterback stats today. And again, not only with the 90 explosive plays from Jaden Daniels, Bloom, but also it was his completion percentage was almost 70% on deep passes.
Right.
That's flipping insane. Sorry, Joe. But like, yeah, you want to see just the tip of what this kid can be. Like, we're just getting started on Jaden Daniels.
Right. And we talked about Jaden Daniels, Chris Trapazzo and I on the couch yesterday, and he is the glass half full, glass half empty prospect in this quarterback class. I think that depending on what you believe is most important, and I know Zach Kruger and pressure to sack ratio, and if you look at the sorting the quarterback prospects by pressure to sack ratio in college, it is a good indicator of how they're going to handle pressure. And Jaden Daniels, even if he wasn't pressured that much, that was a problem for Jaden Daniels. The other thing is throwing the middle of the field, I think, is not necessarily something that is a strong suit. And you also maybe ding him, I don't know, for being a late bloomer, because he wasn't this player at Arizona State, and for the quality of wide receivers he got to throw to. But I would look at this as a glass half full take that look at the growth. What direction is the arrow pointing? Now, will Cliff Kingsbury be a good guy to oversee his development at this point? Did Kyler Murray develop under Cliff Kingsbury? There's fathers again. There's a lot of questions here, but here's why I think in the end, whether it's your dynasty rookie draft, whether it's Washington taking him at number 2 or Las Vegas moving up for him or whoever, why I think it's compelling to take a chance on Jaden Daniels. And it's even how Dane phrases it, right? Because he says it's not an apples to apples comparison, but NFL scouts say he forces opponents to defend him like Lamar Jackson. And what have we been hearing so much about Jaden Daniels is if you ask defensive coaches, Antonio Pierce, who do you not want to face? Who is the worst, most difficult to have to prepare for in this class? It's Jaden Daniels. And I think that a good offensive coordinator, again, is Cliff Kingsbury, I don't know, a good offensive coordinator can use that against a defense. If you know you're putting a defense on their heels when they walk out of the tunnel, then you can make a game plan to use that against them. So Jaden Daniels, yeah, he has probably the highest ceiling in this class, even though he's not going number one.
And he has the best young GM in the NFL, Adam Peters. You will get back on track. Now, Dan Quinn might be John Fox, right? Where it's like you can only go so far. But you have Adam Peters. He's going to build you a hell of a team in Washington. As down as I am on Chicago and anything they do, I'm incredibly high on Washington and what they can do because the guy running the show now actually knows what he's doing. And they got Dan Snyder out the way. Let's talk about JJ McCarthy before we wrap up the show, Bloom. Running a little long here, but we're chatty blankety blankers. So please bear with us. This one's about JJ from an NFL scout. Before he was signed, he was telling other Michigan recruits that if they wanted to party and chase girls, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
His class was going to be the one that restored Michigan. To have that mentality and then actually go achieve it, he's different. Now, let's get back to personality. I'll sound like Jules from Pulp Fiction. Like personality goes a long way with me. So when I was enthralled in the front row, must be in the front row, talking to JJ McCarthy at the Combine, and he's, as someone who meditates every day and sometimes multiple times per day, light and sweet, baby, light and sweet. I remember when Mace asked me, like, why do you say light and sweet all the time? It's like, so I don't lose my flipping mind. Okay. Like light and sweet, baby. Like it's my mantra. Right. But as someone who does that, and then talking to JJ about his meditation and his yoga and his mindset, I believe the best athletes are the ones that perform at a high level in crucial, chaotic situations. And you can do that with a calm mind. There was an old tennis book from the 70s that my dad, wrote, or actually didn't write. He read it, and then he wrote one that was like a rodeo one of like working with the calm mind, the psychology of working in tough situations with a calm mind. JJ has that. And he's real smooth with the media. And again, it could be nothing. But I compare what I saw with Drake May. Drake May has a first round grade for me. He has a second. JJ McCarthy has a second round grade, much like Dane Brugler. Dane and I talked at the Combine about how I got JJ as a high 2, and he said the same thing. That being said, personality wise, it's an A+ all the way around. Other than Jaden Daniels for personality, I flip and love JJ McCarthy and his kind of stylistic approach to this game.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a small sample size, but you see a lot of those things with JJ McCarthy that you want: throwing on the run, big situations, and the personality stuff's funny. What's funny, I think it was Arif Hassan, and I apologize if it wasn't Arif Hassan. He said, "Oh my, the Vikings are just going to get Kirk Cousins from the other Michigan school." So, and that's okay. That's okay. That earnest, sincere attitude, if it is real, if it's authentic. See, in life, what are people going to respond to? Authenticity, right? And he's authentic. And I'm reminded of Ben Roethlisberger or Dak Prescott, right? Now, Prescott wasn't a first-round pick, but the question is why, when you take a quarterback in the first round, or do you move up for a quarterback in the first round, especially? You would imagine that the team would make the whole offense, the whole way we win, about that quarterback. Not the case in Michigan. So that creates some skepticism. But should we have been skeptical about Ben Roethlisberger because he had such a good structure around him and wasn't asked to do much early in his career? Is that because the Steelers were saying he can't do it? Should we have been skeptical about Dak Prescott early in his career because very little of the team was put on him? No. You look at the small sample size and you say, what did he do when the team was asked? I know that there's a lot of looking at the statistics. And someone pointed out, I thought this was really good, there were those games that Jim Harbaugh was suspended for. And in those games, they skewed even more run heavy, which makes sense. If Jim Harbaugh leaves you the keys to the Corvette, you're not going to wreck it. In this case, it's more like the keys to the, you'd be better than I would at filling in whatever it would be here, the Jeep or something like that, because Michigan's definitely not a Corvette. But the point is, you'd say, okay, yeah, we're going to pass like 8 times. If we can win by passing 8 times, I'm going to make sure that we win. So I think statistically, looking at JJ McCarthy and how much Michigan leaned on him isn't an indictment of him. I think it's just saying these guys were trying to win, and they did. JJ McCarthy deserves some of the credit for that.
Yeah. You know who his floor is? His floor is Jim Harbaugh as a player,
Sure.
which means you don't necessarily want him starting, but he'll get that opportunity. Then what can he do from that? And then again, it's all about fit. Only took me 25 minutes to say it, Bloom, but yeah, it's about the fit.
Yeah. And well, we'll see. We'll see if that fits Minnesota. We'll see if that fits Denver. Where things get interesting, Cease, I don't know if you want to roof on this or not. If indeed it is Minnesota moving up for Drake Maye, like I said, I'm not saying it's a sure thing, but if you ask me what's the most likely outcome at the number 3 pick, I would say the most likely outcome, and might only be 30% or 40%, is that Minnesota moves up for Drake Maye, and this trade was already made. This trade was made months ago, but the NFL can't spoil the suspense. So then what happens with JJ McCarthy? At that point, is anybody even willing to trade up to 4 or 5 for him because it is less compelling? The market's not there, right? If you're Denver, who are you bidding against now? I mean, maybe that you need to get ahead of the Giants.
The Raiders might leapfrog you. They're right behind you. The Giants still consider it.
The Giants would consider it. Maybe so Darren Waller doesn't retire. And you know, but and if you're Denver, I mean, look, I think that in a rational playing of the draft, if you're Denver, you're taking Bo Nix in the early second round. You're saying all these teams are going to get their quarterbacks. Nobody likes Bo Nix as much as we do, but that doesn't mean we have to take him at 12. I think if you're a Denver fan, what you're trying to manifest is not Bo Nix at 12. Not Bo Nix in this draft, but just not at 12. You're not going to, no one's going to take him in the first round. You can still get your guy. Sean Payton can have his lump of clay to mold exactly how he wants, knowing that he has a fast processor and some experience in different systems, and actually underrated as a runner and an athlete, things like that. But you don't need to move up for JJ McCarthy. Heck, maybe JJ McCarthy falls to 12, and then Denver has a very interesting choice here. So strangely, if Minnesota gets to move up, and maybe New England takes JJ McCarthy at 11, if Minnesota moves up for Drake Maye, I think that actually greatly improves the Broncos' position.
Yep. And that's why it's a staring contest. Who's going to move first? That's what we talked about on a Tuesday. This Thursday show is brought to you by footballguys.com.
Yeah.
I was like, go get our free draft guide. Okay. And here's what y'all need to do. Want to be a better football fan? Get Matt Waldman's rookie scouting portfolio. Subscribe to footballguys.com. Get our free rookie draft guide. Get Dane Brugler's Beast. Subscribe to Mike Tanier's Substack. Get anything Emory Hunt does. Like, there's so many.
It's the golden age of draft analysis.
It is. Yeah. And who would have thought this, Bloom, when we were doing draft guys and running around, and people are like, that's a good idea, but nobody else was doing it. Now, no one still has done draft guys, which is unfortunate, because I think it would be a smashing success now. But like, would you have ever thought it when it was you and me and Folletti, and we were in El Paso, right? And there's Chad Ryder. I think Chad might have been the only other media member there.
Yeah. Andrew Hawkins.
Where's Josh from Buchanan running around?
He's still out there doing his thing.
The ham and eggs thing, yeah. That's a story I'll leave alone. But anyway, and then meeting Andrew Hawkins, our guy Hawk. Like, would we have thought that, you know, however many years later, don't make me do math, the draft world would be like this? It's incredible.
It's a great thing. And I know one of our three our three credo mottos when we started Draft Guys were breaking down barriers, all glory to the game, and coverage for the thinking fan. And Chris DePrazzo and I were talking about this because in the history of the Audible, I think it's probably been 5 or less guests that I was nervous to interview. Okay, I was really nervous. And actually, Matt Waldman, love him, bless his heart, was such a wonderful person. He actually came on because I was so nervous. I wanted him to come on with me when we interviewed Greg Cosell. And Greg Cosell, I think, and Steve Sable, may he rest in peace, these are the people who really talk about breaking down barriers. They were the first ones to say, maybe football isn't just like an action movie with car crashes, and that's how you market it, and that's how people consume it. Maybe there is a desire, a market, an audience for the intellectual side. There is a market for the side that likes puzzles. It's fantasy football, that likes to know the layers beneath and understand more about what they're looking at than just, wow, boom, blah, my team won, my team lost. And this started back in the 80s. So that's where this story starts. And now we've really seen the flower open, where there's so many people with so many different backgrounds and so many ways of getting after this that illuminate us, and we have a good time doing it. That's the most important part. When you go back to El Paso and Texas versus the Nation, or shoot, even back then at the Senior Bowl, Scott Reynolds helping us out at our first Senior Bowl. We were having a good time. We like spending time together. I like that spirit staying alive in the football world.
Yes, that's right. It is the Audible. Follow Sigmund Bloom on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I am at Cecil Lammey. The show is at the Audible, saying thanks for watching. Help us out on YouTube. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. Stay tuned, and would you please, eyes up, Bloom. Stay frosty.